let's just say they were not happy to see an engine block in too big of a box. I'm sorry if I gotta be a little bit quiet. We're in my apartment. So of course I'm watching Biggest for Build, but I have a belt sander. I just got this from Harbor Freight. And as you can see, it comes with a red sanding grit thing. That's only really meant for wood. They sell, it tells you your size right here, 3x21. And they sell right next to it just other sanding bits for it. You can see mine's blue, because they make some for metal, they make some for fiberglass. Just, you know, make sure you get the right one. We're gonna be using this to sand the rods down. I also have a digital scale. I got this off of Amazon. It's definitely not expensive. It was, I think, 40 bucks. It was nothing crazy. I have the rod balancing kit, and this is how it came. I also got it from Amazon. It's kind of expensive. I think it was $250 or somewhere around there. I have my rods, which are for manly rods, and we'll get into these in a second. And as you can see, you have everything else here laid out. Got all my tools, got a whole bunch of different measuring devices. The crankshaft, have the block, which you can see has been put through a cylinder support system. This used to be an open block design, and now it's not. Have the mount tune, oil pan, head gasket, ARP head studs. We're getting to all this when I get there. But for today, we're focusing on balancing the rods. Also, fun fact, I am doing all this on top of cardboard, and that has to be one of my favorite decisions I've ever made, because you can write on the cardboard all your specs. It's really cool. So if you're planning to do this anywhere, look for some cardboard. I went with Manley's I-beam rods. And yeah, they're really nice quality. So when you're looking at a rod, you got the big end and you got the small end. Obviously the small end connects to the piston, the big end connects to the crankshaft. One thing you have to be very careful of is you have to weigh these separately. And that's what this contraption right here is for. So with my rods that I got, luckily if you get them from a quality source firsthand, they come with the weights already put onto the box. So we have 389.3 on the big end grams, and we have 187.9 grams on the small end. We're going to use that to calibrate our rod measuring machine. Okay, so first thing I want to do is, since all the rods are the same, I want to go ahead and lay them out and mark them and write down their specifications before we even start, because I want to start working on the heaviest one, working towards the lightest one. Okay, cool. So I've set up the scale, and I don't want to touch it, but I have it all set up, and I dialed it off of my rod number 3, which is 388.2 grams. And I have it dialed in there, so now every single time I throw that one on there, it goes to 388.2 grams. But when I throw on a different rod, like rod 4, on the package it says it was 387.2 grams, but on the scale it comes back at the same weight as number 3. And when I throw number 2 on, it comes back heavier also. So only one of them is matching up with the numbers that were supplied to me on the box. So I'm gonna do a little bit. I've watched videos on how to set this thing up. I've changed them around a little bit, but I'm getting repeatable numbers with those other ones, with the other rods, but they're not the numbers I was given. So I may be forced to just kind of assume that the numbers I'm seeing are the right numbers, and the numbers they gave me on the packaging are wrong. I'm gonna keep messing around with it for a couple more minutes, but soon I'm just gonna kind of go with it. So after 30 minutes of messing with it, I'm getting the same weights. I'm getting these weights right here. Only one of them matches up with what Sorry for the background, my roommates are watching a movie. Only one of them matches up with the weight given by Manly. So maybe my scale, this is a $40 scale off Amazon. Who knows? But we're just gonna scale in we're just gonna go off of these measurements. The scale 388.2, and it's really 387.2. If they're all reading the same number, they're all gonna be the same weight, and that's really all we care about, is the same weight. I'm gonna kick on a YouTube video. I'm gonna put you guys up, and we're gonna knock it out. Before I start, I want to just go ahead and show you how I had it set up. You come with this little pedestal, and it comes with 2 different size balls. I don't want to touch it right now since I have it calibrated, but that size ball obviously won't fit inside of my rods. So this is the right size ball. You want the rod to lay on here and go across. Actually, I'll show you. You want this vertical pedestal thing to be holding the top end of the rod if you're measuring the big side of the rod. You want it to be vertical, and you want it to also be perpendicular this way. And you can see the weight says 388.1 when they supplied me with 388.2. Whoa. So we're pretty close. So now we do this and we figure out our lightest one. So I know I've talked about finding the heavier rod, but now that we've found it, how do we make it lighter? So when looking at your rod design, every rod's going to vary very slightly. Obviously, when you're looking at it, you want to remove some material to get the big end down a little bit for the heavier rods, and you want to keep the lighter rods the same. And again, to emphasize that we are measuring the big end and the small end independent of each other. For the big end, we're going to kind of assess what can take a little bit of material being removed. You don't really want to touch any of the bottom, any of these corners in here. You don't really want to touch the bottom. You don't really want to touch the sides, because those are all obviously high stress points right here. So one of the things I think that can take a little bit of material taken off of it and still be fine is these chamfers on this bolt. So right here on the bolt, holding them together, I'm going to remove a little bit of material right here, a little bit of material right here, a little bit of material right here, and right here. You want to remove material evenly throughout the rod, because that's going to give you the most well-balanced rod. If you remove material on one side, then it's going to have weird inertia, you just don't want it. Cool. Another thing to realize is that when you're the difference between balancing rods and pistons is rods are typically a lot denser material. So I'm going to have to remove a very small amount of material on this in order to get a large number change weight-wise, compared to the piston, which I can remove a lot of material. So opting to do that, that's why I'm using this sander. So we're basically just kind of sanding off material rather than using like a die grinder or something that's going to remove a lot of material. Going off of what High Performance Academy recommended in their engine building class, they recommend balancing all of your rods, the big end and the small end, to 1/10 of a gram of each other. If you go up to 100th of a gram or 1,000th of a gram, there's really not much gain you're getting out of that per se, because at that point oil, like carbon and everything on the pistons and rods, are going to add more weight to it than your actual rod. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm gonna get started and throw you on a time lapse and get it done. First of all, I remove weight from the small end from just the top. I use that same belt sander and I just lightly remove material off the top. But now we're completely balanced on the big end and the small end. We are done balancing our rods. A couple of tips I have for using this rod balancing machine. My rod weight never matched the weight that Manly gave me for the Manly rods. It was actually about maybe half a gram off, but it was consistent the whole time. So I kind of will chalk that up to my scale being from Amazon. As long as you're getting consistent numbers with every single rod, then I would say you're pretty safe. So yeah, now we are done balancing the rods. Also, another thing I would recommend is my table setup here. For my table setup, I had the scale right here and I had the piston set up right here. Well, every single time I would move these pistons or I would put my arm on the table, it would change the reading of the scale because the supports of the table are spread out, and it would bend this a little bit and it would make it so like the weight isn't going like this now because the scale's turned, the weight's kind of going at diagonal. Anyway, I would definitely recommend you get a sturdy table and do not move anything on the table. And constantly go back and recheck the base ones. Like you can see right here, I started with 187.1. Then I went back and rechecked. I got 186.9. Then went back and rechecked. I got 186.7. That's all without sanding them. That was just the difference in the table. But finally, I can read all of them. As it sits right now, they all sit at 187 flat. So we are good. So in total, I bought a belt sander, I think it was $30 from Harbor Freight. The rod balancing machine, which is about $250, and a scale for $40. And I balanced my own rods, which would have cost me about, I think they said it was about $50 per rod at the machine shop. So now I have all these tools. I only paid about $70 to $100 more, and I can do it myself. And now I know for my own certainty that they're balanced. Cool, this will conclude the first video. The next video you see is going to be me balancing the pistons, and that's going to be recorded right now because I have them sitting right here, and I'm going to start balancing those. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.